Hi, it's me again for our last class. And this was just called Troubleshooting, and it's really going to be a very brief section here. Um, and the Zoom classes and any the Zoom conversations and any follow-up you want to do is where the treasure is here. Um, I did want to tell you why I'm going to be starting another class for those who are interested in breeding, understanding how the sire selection goes, what to expect for breeding and pregnancy and delivery. And potentially we'll get to sales. We'll see. But that class is going to be run a little differently. Instead of being a weekly class, I'm actually going to be getting it all ready by the middle of July. And I will be posting it to a YouTube channel. There'll be a link from my website to that channel. And we'll follow up. And there'll be Zoom classes. There are Zoom meetups or some type of a meetup every Thursday night at 8 o'clock. People to just come back and meet with me about anything you want to talk about regarding goats. It's just a way to keep some continuity, and that way people don't have to stretch out 10 weeks to watch class, that they can get what they want to get. There will be a fee for that class. It will be set up differently than this one has been. If you have not received, if you've paid for your classes, and that includes Jeff and one other person who paid for all the classes. If you have not yet received your download of the book, let me know. I will resend it. I may have forgotten. It may have gotten screwed up. But I want to make sure everybody that paid for a download of the book, Personal Milkers, will get it. Okay? So, troubleshooting. What can you troubleshoot with goats? Use your imagination, they'll figure it out. The most important thing you need to remember is to observe your goats on a regular basis so you know what is normal and what is not. Pay attention if they're acting weird for more than 15 or 20 minutes. If they're just... One thing we hear a lot about is people saying, my goat is doing this. They're stargazing. What's going on? Imagine if the back of their heads had a rack of horns on them. They're scratching their backs. They know that they're supposed to have horns there to do that with. So even if they don't have horns, they still have an itch, and they're going to do what nature tells them to itch it. So they're not suffering from some terrible disease. They just have an itch. Okay? I know we really haven't talked much about hoof trimming. I'm actually going to edit into this a segment that I did on hoof trimming in a previous program, so you can see more about how to do that. Again, I just use some garden pruners, some rose pruners. You can use bigger things, and I've actually used a hoof planer. This particular video shows me using the rose pruners. And if you want to set that up on a schedule and do it monthly, that's fine. It depends on how many rocks you have. It depends upon how they're feeling, how fast their hoofs will grow. So you decide that schedule. Put them in the milking stand so I can really have good control. And you can see how this is folding over. So I'm just going to clip off the folded over part. And I use the point of my hoof shears to clean it out, and then I can see exactly where all the overgrowth is. Come on. And you can clip in between the cloves. They'll overgrow. If you see, as I clip down a little bit at a time, I keep getting gray. That's all dead hoof. So I trim back a little bit at a time. There is a blood vessel in the tip of the toe, so you want to be careful when you're trimming there. Let's get the other clove done here. You okay?
Yeah. I'll talk about it once this is done. Never mind. Shit.
I'm going to take the audio off. Don't worry about it.
Okay. This is going to be a great video.
Arm around their back end and keep them from doing so much moving around. And when a goat kid is born and they first stand up, once their hooves are solid because they come out soft, that is the natural shape of a hoof. So it's a good idea to take a look at one of those, and we'll do that in a minute because I happen to have a 3-day-old baby here. Easy, Gordy. Gordia. Good girl. Easy, honey. There you go, girl. If you do happen to nick the point and what I call the elf toes, they will scream because it does hurt a little bit. Just take a paper towel and have them stand on it. And it's just a little blood vessel. It's not a major gusher. And their body weight will act as pressure and stop the bleeding. Now you can really see that all this white stuff here, this is extra toe. That's overgrowth. Gordia, easy. And I want to make the bottom of the hoof as flat as I can. Sometimes they'll get a long heel bulb. You can trim that off too. And there's that hoof. Is much better than it was. This is Tatterhood. She's just 3 days old. And if you take a look at these hooves, see if she'll stand up here. No, she's not going to stand up on her own. I'm going to try to move over to the table. Just a minute, guys. Be right back with her. But you can see the hoof. It doesn't really have long toes. The cloves are really close together. And the bottoms are pretty flat. She's already, in 2 days, started to get a little fold over here. You can see how this is the stuff we'll be turning away. But if you can get a picture of a baby that's just a day or two old, and their hooves, keep that in your mind, and that's what you want to keep trimming back for. Here we're going to put Tatterhood back with her mother. The other thing we run into is aggression. Aggression towards people and aggression towards other goats. Particularly goats that were dam raised will know rules. But if they are bottle fed, then they think that people are goats and that they can play the same way. If you let your baby goat nibble at your finger, it's going to eventually suck your finger in and do some serious damage with those back molars. So troubleshoot by just not encouraging them to suck on your fingers. But if they do get a little rambunctious, it does not do any good to push them back, because that just makes them more riled up and want to play harder. So that's where a spritzer or a squirt gun or even a hose is a really good thing. Um, I have had people tell me that that's cruel, but I would tell you that if you watch a herd play amongst themselves and watch them knock heads, there's nothing you can do if you have no weapon. There's nothing you can do to a goat that a goat cannot do to a goat. If you don't do as much as a goat does, as in making things uncomfortable, then the goat wins the fight. So, a water pistol, a spritzer gun, even a hose. As soon as you start to see them rear up on their back legs, give them a spritz. If they're threatening you, if they've got their heads down and they're stomping their feet at you, give them a spritz. All right. You can't spritz them for everything that they do wrong, but pick your battles. And one of the battles is you're going to have. So if they don't respect you, and I have to say, my goats don't do this to me because they do respect me from the time they're little. Even my little ones, my babies, they might rear up for a second, but mama puts them in place as soon as possible. And I'm not that mama. It's their mother. I have only had one buck who came at me. And he was just an oversexed little thing. So water is a really good deterrent. Don't hit them with things you don't need to. Water's really not that violent. And it will break their concentration and wake them up, because they are desert animals and they don't like it. Aggression to other goats, though, if you have set yourself up as the queen or the king of the herd, then you can go in there, and if one is starting to pick at another one, you can intercede and push back. And if you are the queen of the herd, then the aggressor will think twice. But I generally let them figure things out unless it looks obviously like something's getting beaten up terribly. In that case, and I most of the time they don't really want to hurt each other. They just want to show off their stuff. But in the case of a weak one, it's a good idea to have a dog crate or an area called a jug, which is just two sets of, can be panels, can be just or pallets, or just rectangular frames. They're used in sheep operations to separate ewes from when they're kidding. But you can do the same type of thing. Just section off an area of your past paddock or your stall where the weak one can hide. And then just keep an eye on things. Once the weak one stops fighting back, generally they'll settle down. But realize that every time you bring a new animal in, they're going to have to reset the pecking order. Every time an animal goes out and then comes back again, then they're going to have to reset the pecking order. You realize that you're dealing with goats and not people. You can't reason with them. All they understand is there is a dominance order in this herd structure, and everybody has to respect it. The other thing that we think about with troubleshooting is, when do I know when an animal is sick? What do I do? And the first thing is figure out that you know what your animals are like every day. So when they're not acting themselves, that's a sign that something is up. If that's something, if you look in, they're eating and they're drinking and their minerals are there and they're still just not feeling like it, they're not being themselves, then I would do a fecal check, or I would have a vet do a fecal check to see if you're dealing with a worm load, and then have the vet suggest to you what type of wormer to use. I generally know what I'm looking at, but I am learning to do fecals just because I've been doing broad spectrum worming for so long. We're now looking at new parasites coming up that because of the warmer temperatures that we haven't had to deal with before. These things like Haemonchus and P. tenuis and liver flukes, all of which used to be killed off by severe winters up here, not so much anymore. So have your vet run those fecals, and then don't worry about worming on a schedule. Worm as you see that there's a need. The manure is consistently acting clumpy or being clumpy and not individual berries. The animal's continually off its food, things like that. As I said, this class is going to be kind of short and sweet because it's really targeted to what people need. And because we haven't been able to meet the last couple weeks, I don't really know what you need. So I'm going to set it off here. And I hope to be able to see people. I know that Liz and Dan can't make it, but hopefully other people will come in on Thursday night at 8 o'clock in the Zoom class. When I post this, I will post the Zoom announcement at the same time. And watch for HamesAxel.com for details of the next class coming up. It shouldn't be long before I get it together. And we're coming into breeding season. So it's a good idea to have those questions answered before you're faced with needing the answer right now. So that's why I'm offering this class. Okay? So it has been a pleasure to work with all of you. I hope you enjoy your goat adventure, and I hope to see you Thursday night. Okay? Bye.